Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Survive This Crit. We're the podcast that combines our love with horror movies and TTRPGs to take an adventure into some of Hollywood's most infamous movie monsters. And this episode, we are doing an STC Sidequest. As Nick mentioned during our Frankenstein Spooktacular, we needed to go watch Frankenstein 2025 and come back with our thoughts. So that's what we're here to do today. And we have a lot of different viewing experiences. One of us saw it in theaters, one of us saw it on streaming, and we saw it with time change impacting everything as well. So maybe I'll kick us off since I saw it in theaters, and then I'll talk about the theater viewing experience, and then I'll let you take it over from there.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I saw it in theaters on a Tuesday night at one of the local landmark theaters in Pasadena. It was a great viewing experience. It's 2.5 hours long, though. So,
Yes.
shout out to
Gosh,
the movie theater guy who poured a shot into my icy for me. 10 out of 10.
I groaned when I saw the runtime. I was like, "Oh no, you want me to sit down for this long? How dare you, Netflix?"
I know. I feel like that's part of the appeal of why people should have seen it in theaters, though, because like at least you can get snacks and like
Oh my
experience the
gosh.
theater ambiance. I mean, because at least for me, seeing the monster and everything on a big screen on these big, beautiful, practical sets that Guillermo del Toro envisioned was really cool. But it was a 2.5 hour movie at a Tuesday night starting at like 7:45 p.m. So I was tired by the end of it.
I wish I could have seen this movie in theaters. Honestly, I mean, here's the thing. I knew it was somewhere in Australia here. I just don't think it was in my part here, on the West Coast in Perth. Everywhere I looked, I could not find a theater that was playing it. But I saw other podcasters that are also in Australia, but they're in Melbourne actually. They had seen it.
So you insinuated then that you didn't see it in theaters. So tell me about your
No,
viewing experience and we can talk a little bit more about the film itself.
I watched it on the classic millennial or Gen Z screen right here.
You watched it on your phone?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh my
It's been
gosh. That is
so this
like
movie.
not even millennial, that's Gen Alpha. Wow.
Yes, I so it's been a trial getting me to the point of actually getting to see this movie. I've been wanting to see it. I've already told you about like not being able to find it in theaters, and then for those of you who also don't know, I'll just lay out the story here and all my woes and troubles. I like most people borrow my Netflix account from someone else. In this case, my parents, and I constantly have to like go to Netflix and say, "Hey, I am the account owner." Not really, and I'm out of the state or out of the country watching temporarily. Let me watch temporarily, and so every like 2 weeks or so, I have to do the same pattern again and again and again. I it's lo and behold, sure enough, it comes up again. I have to go and request a code. Cannot.
Mhm.
Netflix will not let me. So I can't watch on my TV like I normally do. I can only watch on my phone. And then I figure out that I cannot watch it at midnight on the day of its release. I have to wait for California release time, which is 4 in the afternoon here in Australia, in Perth. And I had too many other things going on, so I couldn't watch this movie until 1 a.m. the day of was it this day that we're recording. So you're catching me on maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep. I definitely drank like 3 coffees to stay awake.
Oh my gosh. That's, I mean, even I can't even imagine viewing it on a phone like that because there are so many like details. Like the half the movie, we can just get into this. Half the movie was like montages of things happening. The Frankenstein building the laboratory, Frankenstein sweeping up the laboratory, Frankenstein training the creation. So like half the movie felt like it was musical montages of things happening. So I imagine watching that on a phone had to have been particularly challenging.
It was all, I would say, really the most difficult part about it was, my wife being very, very nice. She offered to drive to and from the party, so that way I can at least take 30 minutes, because it takes 30 minutes to get from our house to their house, to my wife's family
Mhm.
house. So that at least got me an hour during the afternoon or the evening time to watch the movie. But the sunlight, oh my gosh, the sunlight made it so hard to see the first 30 minutes of the film,
Yeah, because it's
especially.
pretty dark. Most of the film is pretty dark, which is why like watching it in a darker room is usually probably the preferred viewing. There's actually been a lot of screenings in LA this week, like specialty screenings. Like I think there was a screening at the Chinese Theater and stuff like that, happening in Hollywood. So I know LA has been taking it pretty seriously and doing like additional specialty screenings. But honestly, kudos to you for watching the whole movie, especially with half of it being in the sun and then at 1 o'clock in the morning. I could not have done that. I mean, even me on a Tuesday evening, I was like, I'm getting tired. But I did want to point out, like, one thing I loved about this movie is Guillermo del Toro clearly read and loved the book.
Yes, actually. So I'm happy we're getting into that now. So, uh, let's start like at an overall level, like high level.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts of the film?
I actually really liked it. I mean, for an adaptation, like, it was a little long. But I think maybe we're just in the age group where we can't handle movies that are super long anymore. Um,
No, because you
but
got
like
busy
it was
life.
a little long. It's like two and a half hours. I really liked that it followed the book pretty much to a T, like with the perspective of the monster and the doctor. And I kind of liked the angle that he took. He did take a little bit different of an angle in regards to the effort that was made by the doctor to make the monster like his son type thing. And then, of course, him stumbling into the same patterns that his father had done with him. So I think for me, it was I really enjoyed like some of those deeper relational aspects. I think character development wise, my one grief was that the go to for Mia Goth's character was that she was just going to be falling in love with the monster. I mean, she was so much more than that, but if I was going to make it very simplified, they kind of were like playing into that theme, and I was like, but she's so smart and like she's so much smarter than him. Like, why is she being
Yeah.
deduced to just like falling for the monster and dying because of it? Because like she saw him
I
from
think
like a
part of that.
scientific aspect, and he was like, "Mommy," which I mean, it's Mia Goth. Who wouldn't be like that? But still,
What else is Mia Goth in? I don't feel like I've seen her in anything before.
she was in Pearl, X, and Maxine, which is like a kind of like a trilogy. It's the X film series from 2022 to 2024. She was in Emma. She was in Suspiria. She was in A Cure for Wellness. She's in a lot of period pieces and a lot of like horror.
Okay, so she's got a whole niche going on for
Yeah,
her career,
definitely. And I
anyways.
feel like this was perfect for her because it's period piece and horror. So it like for her it's perfect. It was very, very well cast.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So what about
I,
you?
I yeah, I agree with you for the most part. So I was very excited at the beginning of this movie because it started just like the book. I was like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
we're on the frozen boat. Oh,
Yeah.
I could not, for the life of me, recall any Frankenstein adaptation that actually started with the boat sequence that's at the beginning of the book. And
Started
so I got
and
so
ended with the
excited.
boat. Like that I
Exactly.
haven't seen any sequence either, any like adaptation either as far as I know that started and ended with a boat. It was so cool.
I do think there's at least one, but I don't think I've actually seen it where they involve some type of frozen tundra thing, whatever. But this is like the first time we're seeing those. I've personally seen those details. So I was super pumped. I was excited. I was like, oh my gosh, is this going to be like a beat for beat remake. It was not,
Mm-hmm.
but I really like this because it definitely there were some very clear differences. You know,
Mm-hmm.
different characters were used, different story plots. You know, the book doesn't have Elizabeth falling in love with Frankenstein, but it
Yeah.
also doesn't have her marrying William. And then the whole like was it Guillermo del Toro took the whole liberty with Victor and his relationship with his father. You know that in
Mm-hmm.
the book that was actually a decent relationship. It was an okay relationship. Um, you know, so it had all these different elements to it. But what I loved is that even though it he Guillermo del Toro took his own liberties with the story, the emotions and the major themes were all still there for the most part. You know, every character kind of evoked the same level of emotion reaction that I had to their counterparts in the book, where
Yeah.
I still hated Victor, just like I did in the book.
I mean,
I was
he's
like,
kind
this
of the worst, and I think we can see that even in this film. We can see how flawed he is, and you're like, pull yourself together, man. Ah.
stop being so dramatic. He, oh my gosh, I was so upset with Victor when he was just like, "You only know one word. I created life, and you only, but you're not smart enough. So I'm just gonna burn down this entire tower."
And then he turns around and he's like, Elizabeth. And he's like, oh, now I'm definitely burning this down. I think one interesting aspect to the character of the monster, I loved seeing it played out with him watching the family. Because we haven't
Mm,
seen that in really any of the adaptations, especially for like a long period of time. And then with him getting discovered as well, I thought that was so cool because you really see him become a part of this family in this really weird way. And then as soon as he's actually discovered, the family immediately ejects him. Um, I thought that was honestly probably one of my favorite parts of the movie because it's one of my favorite parts of the book is watching this
yeah,
bond with this family grow. Um, and I want to give kudos to Jacob Elordi because he plays like kind of a lot of douchebag characters, and I just like the physicality of the monster because it wasn't a super verbal monster for a lot of it, but just the movement work that Jacob Elordi must have done to understand this character was really impressive because he nailed down the stiffness of Frankenstein while also nailing down the like scared creature who is learning to adapt in this new body. I thought like that was really impressive to me. I really have to give him kudos there because he's not historically been my favorite actor, and he's also a fun character to hate on shows like Euphoria. But in this film, like he really brought his A game, and I like just need to throw the kudos out there.
yeah. So I another actor I'm not familiar with. Honestly, the only actors I was familiar with this movie were Oscar Isaac. Uh, you know, he did some great work in different comic book movies like X-Men Apocalypse and Moon Knight, which my wife and I just love. You know,
Mm.
hilarious, also great action, all fun stuff. So Oscar Isaac, he's known throughout our household. Uh, but also Christoph Waltz was a great addition to this movie, I thought personally. He's the uncle to Elizabeth and
Oh
Dr. Frankenstein
yeah,
doctor, the
I was
man with
literally about to pull it
syphilis.
up. The syphilis man. Yes. Okay. I remember him now.
I think his name's
They needed a
Harlander.
mentor character. Like they needed
Well,
a
not just a
reason
mentor.
for
They
him to
needed.
start this.
Here's the thing. I think a lot of the reasons I like the liberties that Guillermo del Toro took with the story is he adapted it one for a more modern audience who already knows the story, but also
Hmm.
he kind of took some of the parts where, like, personally, like, I read the book of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and the parts where she kind of just like hand waved and said like, "Oh yeah, well, Victor just had the resources to make the monster." He decided to
Yeah.
add a bit more lore and explanation behind it. So
Mm.
we get to see like, oh, this is how Victor came about having all the technology and money that he needed to, do his experiment. Turns
Yeah.
out Christoph Waltz is a rich arms dealer trying to find a way to escape his fate of dying because of syphilis or something like that.
That's a good point because I hadn't thought previously. I guess when reading the book, I just pictured him coming from like a wealthy family or something. Um, but having more lore there enriched the story so much because then, I mean, this whole episode is spoiler alert. When, like, the first time he really crosses that line of morality is when he is fighting with his friend and his friend falls and dies and his head is bashed in. And the doctor's like, all right, I I guess we're gonna still like bring this monster to life, and then we're gonna blame his death on the monster. I thought that was an interesting change
Yeah,
too. Is like the twist of turning his own immorality and blaming it on the monster as a result was really interesting.
it really felt like this movie was trying to drive the point across, which I'm still trying to figure out for myself because, again, I just watched this not too long ago.
Hmm.
I don't know how much I like the whole Victor is the monster, in a sense, from a morality standpoint.
I think that
You know
is
what?
the point. I mean, even in Mary Shelley's book, Victor is the monster. He's supposed to be the monster.
Is
The
he supposed to be the
monster,
monster? Or is he the hero that we don't necessarily like, but he's trying to learn a lesson?
I
I'm saying
mean,
I'm still
does
sorting
he
that
learn
out.
a lesson? I mean, that's fair. Like, yeah, we're still figuring it out. But for argument's sake, by the end of the film, just like in the book, he and the monster come to like a reconciliation. And
Mhm.
then, you know, the the Dr. Frankenstein's like, "Let me die." And then he dies. I feel if anything, similar to my stance in the Spooktacular, that the monster is the anti-hero and that Victor is the villain. That's still my stance all the way. This movie did not sway that at all. I think that kind of goes to show that in the end, the monster walks out as the hero. After they reconcile, he gets what he wants, and then he sets the 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 hostages free. He doesn't keep them for any sort of personal gain. And he also, I think we were missing the part of like, he wanted a mate, but like that whole plot point disappeared. So I am curious what you thought about the whole disappearance of that last half of the book where he's hunting down to like build a mate and he's going to tear up the mate in front of him. Like they talk about it, but it doesn't really go down quite the same as it does in the book.
Well, looking through the movie, what I bet is they had more to it when they filmed.
Mm.
But as with a lot of movies, you have to cut down. And what we ended up with was a 2.5 hour, long film that actually, it was pretty decent. And I bet you, if anything, there probably was a bit more with the creation of the bride,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. But I think it works out better in this case, not just because of reducing the runtime, but because it really just focused more on the real center of the story, which is the relationship between Victor and the monster. I think this is a great example of that. In that it's not the same exactly as the original book, but we at the end we still feel the exact same way about the characters and about the plot and everything. So I think that this is one of those ones that can go in the column of great remake.
I would 100% agree with you on that. I think it is a great adaptation. Like you said, it takes the best parts of the book. And I think you worded it really eloquently by saying that it brings out the same emotions. But since the book is only 143 pages and the novel was, in the movie was 2.5 hours long, do you feel like there was anything that was like missed per se, or anything um, that you would have wanted to have seen?
I would have wanted to see Victor be more sickly during the whole creation of the creature process. I was kind of like, I saw Oscar Isaac, playing the role, and you get that sense like, okay, he's obsessed with this, but he looked too healthy. I wanted to see him be like, "Ugh, I'm losing my health. I haven't been sleeping. I'm so sick because I've been working on my project that I've been so obsessed with having done. Oh, I haven't seen sunlight in months. I'm not crazy. You're crazy."
I get that. I think similarly, like I kind of would have wanted him to be a little bit more remorseful initially after he made the monster. I get that they took a different path, but even if he'd had one moment of like oh, I'm gonna barf because I just like created life, and that's kind of like a queasy, stomach turning act to do. But I think it would have been more interesting to have seen him a little bit like sickly. We see him very sickly in the end because like it's all caught up to him, and maybe that's like the principle of the body keeps the score, where he just was, his ambition was pushing him past it, and then in the end he uh it catches up to him at the end. But to take us down another quick pivot, I loved that they used a lot of practical production design, practical props, things that actually worked and moved. And I thought the costumes were beautiful too. So, what did you think about like the time period and the adaptation in regards to how visually it appeared on the screen?
Yeah, so that was something I was trying to figure out because I was I spent a lot of time while watching the movie wondering and looking at the background and thinking to myself, how much of this is CGI and how much of it is real? Or
Guillermo del Toro did say in an interview that he really likes to lean toward practical effects. So I'd like to imagine that there was probably a healthy balance, if anything, leaning a bit more practical. But as we start to wind down here on our side quests, what are like your takeaway thoughts of this film? Because I know we have two more adaptations coming out. We have a Bride adaptation coming out next year, and another adaptation coming out with Sebastian Stan in the future, as of now. So, what are your thoughts on like the longevity of Frankenstein and just like this movie as a whole? Like, would you see this again on a bigger screen? Would you dress up as this version of Frankenstein's monster or as Dr. Frankenstein?
I would 100% dress up as Victor. I don't know about I don't know about the monster, but I could probably get more away with dressing up as Victor. I could probably get Kaya on board with dressing up like Elizabeth, get that cool period piece dress going, and I get the awesome, like, manly blouse shirt with the vest going.
Next year's Halloween costume, write it down.
Exactly. I'll grow my hair out a little bit, somehow find a way to straighten it out so it doesn't just come out looking like a sort of wavy afro thing. But what was the other question again? The first part to it?
Like, what do you think? Like, would you watch this film again? And what do you think about the longevity of Frankenstein? Based on the success of this movie at this point, do you think that the other films are going to do well as well?
That's difficult to say. I definitely think this movie was well done, but I don't know how popular it really is. I Man, I mean, I don't feel like this got as much hype as, say, K-pop Demon Hunters of this year, to compare it to a different Netflix thing that is actually very popular and everyone knows. I don't think this particular version with Guillermo del Toro at the helm is gonna like say start off a franchise or have some sequels or something to it. But I think it's very well done. I think it's definitely going in like my top five of Frankenstein adaptations, maybe even top three. As far as how the other adaptations are gonna do, I have no clue. You mentioned Sebastian Stan's gonna be in one of them. I'm excited to hear that. I want to see that.
Yeah, I talked about that one on our deep dive. So if anyone wants to check out more information about that one in particular, check out our spectacular deep dive on Frankenstein's monster. But I looked up the numbers for this film. So Netflix doesn't report their numbers as to like how much they gross in theaters because it's really rare for them to release anything in theaters. So take these numbers with a grain of salt. Apparently there was an estimated like $345,000 that was gross domestically from the October 24th to 26th weekend, which someone on Reddit broke down as an average of like $900 per theater. So I think you're right that like compared to K-pop Demon Hunters, which came out on Netflix first and did amazing, by the time this comes out, my prediction is that Frankenstein will be charting in the top 10 of Netflix easily because it's a film that's been getting enough hype. Like in LA, where I'm at, Guillermo del Toro has been making some appearances at screenings and stuff like that to promote the film. So it's still showing in some theaters, and I think people are watching it in theaters, especially in bigger markets like LA and New York, for the novelty side of it. But I think when it starts appearing in the top 10 on Netflix, I think that'll be like a different story. I think people are going to be talking about it more by the end of this week, by the time we release it on the 14th, or by weeks following. Because it's a great movie. It's a great adaptation. It was really well done. If you like Guillermo del Toro, it's a great film to watch. But I do think this reignites the interest in the Frankenstein's monster to show that as an IP, it's not completely dead, which I think is really exciting. But Nick, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close out?
Just that if you are listening to this and you haven't seen the movie, I highly recommend you go watch it. It's really great, very well executed, and I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything crazy or controversial here by saying like this is just an overall good movie, and I think Guillermo del Toro did a great job. So, highly recommend it. Go and see the movie if you haven't, and if you can see it in theaters, go see it in theaters because man, do I wish I had actually had that experience.
Yeah, I mean, seeing it in theaters was a really cool experience. If you get the opportunity to see it in a theater, definitely go support the local theaters. If you see it at home on streaming, that's all right. At least do it with the lights out, with lots of snacks, and try to watch it in all one viewing because I think how they break up the story is really unique. But yeah, I appreciate you guys joining us on our side quest today. Make sure to come back next week because we are diving into the making of It Chapter 2. And then we will be watching Nick's very last campaign for now of him as a DM for It Chapter 2. We have some very special guests coming back for that. So thank you guys for joining us. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, whatever you want to do. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.